officially in the R2 release for GP 2015 now. So when was that? That was just as of last month, I want to say, that they put it out there. So there's some new features that they've added. If you haven't caught up on GP 2015 up to this point, I'd definitely get out there and see what's new and what they've added in. But let's kind of take a look and see what's been out there and what's going on for this. So roadmap, here we are. We're getting into R2, so we're in this little subset of information. Next release won't hit until first part of 2016. They're still on that aggressive 6-month release time schedule. And these are the different things that we're going to be looking at today. They are actively getting into, the top features requested by customers. They are constantly, emphasizing that a lot of the different things that are coming out of their development and the new releases and everything are driven by customer requests and, customer feedback. So getting out there and putting in that type of feedback, it definitely does produce some level of results. So, looking at R2, some of the basis, the content that's in there. Now we're looking at support for the application of the business analyzer side and things like that. Now they're branching out to multiple platforms on the mobile devices, different tablets, so Apple iPad, Android tablets, many kinds. Getting into more business intelligence, social media sides of the system, service-based architecture. They're continuing to build upon that. I know it's not exciting to everybody, but it really gives us as developers in our organization and other developers and things like that an exciting basis to be able to build and create new works of art within GP and the surrounding area. And then Microsoft is constantly working on integrations to kind of bring together the whole family of Microsoft products and others beyond there. So things like, if you've ever seen Yammer or the Microsoft Azure, they're really pushing for that cloud, environment for deployment, so hosting and not having to worry about all the hardware on your premise that, you get to shovel all that to somebody else, but they get to deal with the hardware and, the servers and everything along those lines. So let's get in. So the feature review, Dynamics GP 2015 R2 features. This is our bullet points. I know there's one thing that I will mention on here that did not make the cut, but all-in-one document viewer in purchasing. It's an exciting bit that I saw demo the first time at, what was that, Convergence, I guess. It was either Convergence or the GPUG Summit. It is a piece in the purchasing side that you can view all things happening with purchase order, a vendor, things of that part. SQL View in SmartList Designer. So constantly evolving the SmartList Designer. So if you have not jumped ship yet and hit SmartList Builder up to this point, SmartList Designer is getting more and more intuitive as it progresses and evolves in the Microsoft product. The newest one being SQL View Designer, which means that one of the limitations of SmartList Designer prior to now was that you couldn't create new SQL statements, couldn't create new SQL joins of joining in multiple points of data, joining two tables together. It was very difficult, or you'd have to have somebody on the back end create you a view to do that. So they've added in the ability now to design your own SQL views to join together multiple tables to get multiple points of reference. SmartList default new favorites. The user will see that and talk about it. Hide show serial numbers, view your W-2s, combine GL summary and detail, time management apps, historical received not invoiced report. That was a big request that they put out there. If anybody's ever had the fun of doing three-way matching and then finding out historically at a point in time, was this actually invoiced at that point in time? A few reconciliation efforts on our customers have hit that. Auto deposit cash receipts in the bank rack. Visual indicator for over credit limit. Majority of everything now in the sales and purchasing forms can be emailed. There's self-service user types that are a benefit to companies who want a very thin experience for their users. AP invoice workflow approval, and then a workflow document attached. So let's get into it. So first section to talk about is our business intelligence and what they've added in there. So by default, in your SmartList Excel reports, database tables, and views and everything, your debits now come before credits. Some people might find that exciting. Others, great. I know. It's so funny. This was one that I saw everybody go, yay about it. Like, that was almost exciting as the ability to choose your printer at the time of going through printing. So Yeah, there's, once again, it's funny seeing the things that I find exciting versus the thing that all the users are like, finally. So the next one is default smart list visibility. And I know I ran into this just recently with a couple of customers where they came to me, Nick, I think it was you. Here it is. Here's your solution, at least moving forward. You collect clutter, right? Everybody collects clutter on their smart list favorites. All of a sudden you go in and you expand the smart list favorite area and you go, oh my God, what are all of these smart lists in there? You've been on GP for several years and you look and it's somebody going in and saying, okay, I want this column here. All right, now I need to save that favorite, and instead of modifying, add a new favorite, and a new favorite, and a new favorite, and a new favorite. So all of a sudden your list of available smart list favorites goes from the 4 extremely nice defined ones to 27, 29, 30, 50 that you have to weed through. So that's the benefit of this is now in the system preferences, you can set it up so the user still has the interaction for choosing, save it, and make it visible to the system, but by default you can set it up by the user ID, which means that instead of cluttering up everybody, all they're doing is just adding more menu selections to their screen. And that's the strategy that you can adopt now in earlier versions of GP. Just instruct individuals on creating favorites that they should select user ID. So it just shows up for themselves. So their personal preferences and smart lists that are their favorites only show up for themselves, and it's not cluttering up other individuals. But this here just kind of alleviates that a little bit because you're setting it as the default, which means that even if somebody got in and got trigger happy with it and hit add, just went with it, it was already defaulted to that unless they physically changed it. Cleaning up prior to now, that's still a whole other beast, but moving forward, that can help drive you on that side. So the next one is the ability to submit views into the workflow. So create SQL views within the company database, and then those specific views can be set up and help drive workflow now in the system through Smart List Designer. So now that queries are developed and everything, those can then show up as selection criteria within the workflow elements within GP, which means that, okay, you had this subset of data that you can help drive your workflow at this point where it went out and said, okay, the document or the document was an order, or the document was an invoice, or the balance was this, the customer was this, it should flow to this specific manager, and if it met this criteria, you were kind of limited to what was within GP at that point. This just kind of opens the book that now you can add in your own data sets to the workflow at that point. The next area of emphasis is distribution. So they've added in, create a new SQL reporting service report to have a cutoff date based on the transaction date or the GL post date to allow your customers to report for historical purposes. So that's kind of the nice thing is that now they can go in and they can report in the majority of, in this report at least, for the historical received not invoiced report. So up to this point, if you wanted to go back in time and find out, was it invoiced at the time that this vendor is asking me about, or in my reconciliation efforts when I'm trying to figure out what hit my AP clearing account at a specific time, this report is crucial and is available in GP, but it's right now. It's at this point in time. This one gives you the ability to go back and say, okay, I'm now trying to reconcile my AP clearing account, my purchase clearing account. Should I be seeing this on my general ledger transactions at this point, or should it have been off of there? So that's what this report now allows in the system, is to be able to help find out point in time posting and where that activity for the purchasing three-way match has occurred in the system.
Excuse me, is it going to be accurate?
It should be accurate.
So should the aged AR, historic aged AR, but it's not.
Oh, the SRS report that was out there? Yeah, I know I've ran into a couple instances where you have to update the SQL view and things like that, so there are some nuances. This one up to this point seems to be working accurately from what I've experienced. Yeah, I know, like the historical inventory trial balance.
Tying out to the general ledger, right?
There's some of those. If you go out and you just hit some of the search forums and things like that, people have posted fixes and things like that they've had to apply to them. So I don't know that development.
Typically, you're throwing a PDF out and then manually checking GL, and if they match, okay, fine, you got a saved document. not contending with the history.
Yeah, and you bring up a good example about any of the SRS reports that we've looked at this point, is that if you are going to adopt and go down that route, that you want to tie them out to a GP report before you take them as the set path to report. So definitely as you go through that work, through those steps. The next one's a big enhancement that they added out there, and I look for more windows to kind of mirror this and work down the path, is the purchasing all-in-one document view. Once again, I look at this and go, okay, somebody really loves purchasing, but where's our sales side? So I'm hoping they go down that route. But this window works exceptionally well because it gives you the ability to filter by, say a vendor ID, and then all of a sudden you get this kind of wall of activity occurring with that vendor and what's happening with them, and some data points on there, the ability to drill into these, selecting purchasing invoices. You can access everything basically from there and get an all-in-one view of the activity that's currently happening with that specific vendor. And it's very flexible. It's nice. It's a very nice interface where they're going with it. Once again, you're going to consistently see GP morphing into this more of an HTML look and feel, because they're constantly pushing the web client. So you're going to see the client version of GP more and more resemble a kind of a web page navigation and interaction. Like if you've seen the homepage now for GP 2015, it's got the little big icons for like the requisition area and stuff like that. So a lot of efficiency and cool things behind that. There are some very nice demos of that online, and I would not mind walking anybody through who wants to see more functionality of that at any time. So next big one, if you've ever ran into this, is, okay, whenever you post cash receipts in the system, can it automatically post deposits on your bank side? Or is there the double step that you have to have with that where, okay, we posted all these cash receipts, now we have to tell it that we went to the bank and we put all our deposits into the bank, and whatever has happened at that point. They've just added it now to the company setup where now you can check that box, and whenever you post a cash receipt in the sales side, it's automatically deposited to your bank account in GP. So it automatically affects your checkbook at that point. Just like if we posted a check in AP. So analytical accounting, transactions list. So if anybody using analytical accounting in here, AA, so a little bit everything. So they've added, some inquiry smart lists now for AA open transactions and such out there. So some new smart lists on that side where you can go through and get what's actually happened with some of the analytical accounting transactions in the system. They've been added to smart lists and Excel reports. So it includes a column for each transaction dimension to show up within those. So payables transaction approval workflow. So as you've seen, the big push, GP 2013 R2 added in purchase orders, purchase requisition, some other payroll, time card, things like that workflow in GP. So they took that envelope that they had out there originally in SharePoint, put it into GP where now you can implement workflow just in the GP environment. You don't have to have SharePoint installed. They took it a step further with GP 2015 where they basically took all of the native architecture that they had out there of the workflow system and brought it underneath GP. So that included, GL batches and AR batches and AP batches, everything you can imagine. And now they've taken it just one step further. This was, if anybody's ever used workflow in the past, this would have been something you probably asked for on the AP side. But up until GP 2015 R2, you could set up approvals on an AP batch in the system, but you couldn't actually set up a workflow approval system on the AP transactions themselves, which means somebody could go in and key in an AP transaction, plug in whatever dollar amount they want, feed all this other information, and it didn't need to go to somebody to say, yes, that looks right. We normally pay that, or it looks accurate, or anything along those lines. And now they've added that step in here to make sure that now in the workflow, it would flow and allow you to define a workflow, somebody's work to stop for, and that individual to approve it before it gets posted to your financial ledger in the system and updates your accounts payable. They have added now a visual indicator for over credit limit. So it determines what you're going to do with that specific customer at the time of entering it in. Visual indicator to let you know exactly that they are over credit limit or anything along those lines. So the customer has exceeded this credit limit. And now you get to see a little icon on there that says, hey, they are over credit limit. You should probably review that a little bit further. So new options whenever they're notified for a customer that's over, and in the receivable setup, you can just display an icon at the time of entry or for it to give you a warning message. So it's just a little more obvious versus the other that was out there to begin with. Last one on the financial side is now they've added in that details and summary inquiries include both history and open. So there's no more having historical summary for the financial account transactions and an open. They're all combined into one. So you don't have to bounce between the two or remember that you actually closed out last year or any of that information. Now they just consolidated it and made it more user-friendly where you go to one spot, pick your year, and run with it from there. So human resources and payroll. So anybody using human resources and payroll may get excited about this. So you now have the ability to match the Social Security number on payroll and HR reports if you choose to. So you have the ability to select specific reports based off the information in the payroll setup that you would like to match that on, so that they can be deployed or shown to other people without critical information showing up that people may not want to be thrown out all over the place. Time management application. So Business Analyzer really took off, and they have that now where it's cross-platform and everything along those lines. But now they're pushing for the deployment and activity to be able to take time off from your tablet, from a Windows 8 application, or from an Android or an iOS. So a user could pull up this application once it's deployed and say, you know what, I want to take the 14 off, or I'm going to need to take these certain days off, and they'll be able to see what their vacation and sick time balance is and have more of an interactive capability with the system for being able to ask time off versus having to go and request it from a manager or something. Just puts it into the queue. Maybe you even have this set up where they put in the request for time off and it gets off workflow, so that it then email notification goes to somebody, they approve it, and all of a sudden their time is marked for approved on their time management app. So employee self-service was another big piece that they've added in to the system, and what they've done now is now an employee can go in through their employee self-service experience in GP and they can get their W-2. So you're printing W-2s from GP. Why should you have to go back and reprint it? They can go through and reprint, run their own W-2s that were created and generated from the system at their own pace and at their own need. So just a few system changes that they've put out there. So they've added in. So you may have heard it thrown around if you've been looking at any type of licensing options, adding new users or anything into GP. They've just added the new user type to the list of the drop-down. Before now, it was kind of a smoke and mirrors. How in the world do you configure a self-service user license? There wasn't an option for it. Okay, you had to configure it this way, and it did this in the system. Now they've just made it nice and easy where you pull that down and select it from the list. They've also deployed employee self-service roles into the system that deploy with the upgrade or this version of GP. And for anybody who doesn't know what an employee self-service is, very limited user, very inexpensive user. So if you need somebody that can access the system, look at certain things, do self-service on the payroll side, requisitions. So if you're looking at adopting purchasing requisitions, this user can use that type of information. It's just a new user type, so that you don't have to get the limited user, which is a certain amount, or a full user, which is everybody understands that cost behind those users.
So you're saying that's license free?
No, I'm not. It's not free, no, but it is inexpensive. Chris, what is the price tag on a self-service? Is it $70?
$60 plus software assurance. But it does not require a SQL cal because it's going through a web client that uses an anonymous user license. So does that make sense? So if you need 1,000 of them, they're $60 plus SA, but you don't have to deal with SQL licensing.
Which really help reduce that overhead that you're looking at for kind or new implementation. Another piece that they've added in, just from a system standpoint, is you've seen the work templates being implemented and added out there in the system and really pushed and everything up to this point, but there's been limitations on which ones could be accessed. Up until now, it was all over the blank forms for sales And now they've just taken it a step further, and now there's the blank that shorts along the other forms that you can set up and configure out there for the emailing option, which just opens the door that, you know, you can connect a whole lot of new report formats, report layouts, and take advantage of those as you needed to. And they've just added that out there to be able to send those in the email, work templates for each. This one's a little beyond me, but just from a scriptable GP provisioning and management standpoint, I know some of our team from the hosting standpoint and implementation, deployment, things of that sort would get excited about these, but there are now scriptable provision, commandlets, templates, remoting, things like that that are now available in this version that just help make our job a little bit more efficient, especially if you're going the route of doing any type of terminal server hosting or deployment activities on your own. This was just an exciting area for some of those users to get into. Now, the last one that is probably the biggest enhancement if you've been looking at workflow up to this point. So the premise behind workflow is the ability to set up that we just created a document in the system, but I have somebody in the hierarchy of my company that needs to look at that document before it's posted, before it goes through, before it's approved. So there is somebody in the company. Now, that individual that needs to approve it may not be a GP user. So you look to be able to send these out, the email notifications out for the approval at that point in the workflow process. One of the things that wasn't there before is, okay, now you've got a user that's outside of GP that needs to approve an AP transaction or a GL transaction, but there's a document linked to it in GP. So you've got this document attached in GP, you've uploaded the invoice document for that AP transaction, and the person approving it probably should see that. Well, you'd have to email it out individually from there. Now they've added it, if you use the document attached in GP and workflow is turned on, you can actually say any documents that are attached to that transaction as they flow through the workflow and they hit this individual, this individual, this individual through email, the documents are attached in the email also. So that's the big push there, is now that the user will be able to see anything that they need to approve attached to their email without having to be that GP user to approve that.
Question.
Yeah.
Is that limited to AP, or can you attach documents throughout?
Document attach is available all throughout GP. So if you go to administration setup, there's a document attach option within there, GP 2013 and on. And what it does is, if you remember the old days of the OLE container that used to be off the notes window, it basically replaces that. And anybody who has massive amounts of OLE data right now, there is a migration tool that you can use. So if you do have massive amounts of attachments right now, and you don't want to lose that data fidelity, there is a migration tool that converts it all over to the document attached side. Yeah.
So is there the ability right now to attach, say, for example, an AP to an AP record input in GP without the add-on? So in other words, I've seen products where you can buy a product, scan your AP invoice, attach it to your transaction at GP. Is that built into GP?
It is. Yeah.
When did that happen?
You know, it was there. You had to hunt a little bit for it in the past. So anybody who ever lived in this mindset, you know, beforehand it was.
I don't need to divert the whole attention.
Yeah, no, not a problem. But before it was, you know, on a note, on a record within GP, you could actually pull up the record. And let's say that we were in sales or somewhere like that. You know, beforehand, before the document attachment days, it was pull up a record, click on the note icon from here, and then hit the attach down here at the bottom. And that would reel you into an OLE container where you could attach documents. And now this just takes it a step further, where now the user, now with the document attached, it just makes it a little more clean cut and it's prettier. But now those document attachments, like I said, they will flow through to our workflow process in the system with this enhancement. So lots of really neat, new, cool things always coming out. They're constantly evolving this. You know, R3, if we saw on the actual roadmap, next things that we have to look forward to out there. Hop back here. The roadmap, next area that they're getting into, like I said, they're getting down that path of doing HTML and things of that sort. So we should look for these new enhancements in the roadmap first part of the year. Constantly improving that web client experience, multiple browser and device support for the web client, which means now you're in the realm of, okay, I can pull it up on mobile devices and things of that sort. So now it's GP on your phone, on your tablet, or something along those lines. More workflow enhancements. I haven't yet heard what those are. I know that they're constantly moving towards that HTML5 experience, which gives them a lot more robust capabilities for programming and user experience, and then, of course, more top features. So we should look for that for first part of 2016. But other questions, anything like that on R2? One of the big things that didn't make it through the cut that I know we just had an inquiry come up about recently was they were supposed to have, and I'd look for it to be in the next installment, is the ability to pay by select credit card as a payment type in AP check batches. So that's going to be the next one, is that you can actually, in the select checks process, you can choose that it's a credit card batch. So that was one thing that was listed at one point in bullet points for R2 release, and then just kind of fell off at this time when it was released. So other questions, anything on R2? Lots of cool stuff, lots of stuff to keep up with, and help justify a move from where you're at to a newer version. But we can definitely help you through that process and talk through it. Questions? Well, guys, I do appreciate you sitting through so much of me talking. Really got the number today, but it was good. I enjoy talking about this stuff, and if you do have any questions as we work through that, by all means, please just let me know.